Debuting Dana White's Contender Series contract winners meet in a bit of a head-scratcher of a co-main event. Coming up this weekend, we have Caio, Robert Redford baseball movie, Borralho taking on Gadzhi Omargadzhiev. And for the natural, if you didn't get it on the first time, Caio Borralho is such an interesting prospect coming out of Brazil because if you took the glasses off, you might go, hey, is that Paulo Costa? Is that guy? At 185. And he has such an interesting style because he can get it done a little bit with his grappling. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, but at the same time, he really does have a unique striking style almost just to him. And I know the broadcast might say, okay, a little bit Machida, a little bit insert karate fighter here. But he is one of those really, really interesting guys to watch, and he has some wrestling defense that we love to see when he took on Aaron Jeffrey, but he also brought in his own wrestling in that one. I think that's a great litmus test coming into the UFC. But really, if you do look at it, he's in around, a plus 135 when he takes on Aaron Jeffrey, or minus 135, I should say. No, it was a plus. Takes on Jesse Murray. Minus 550 favorite to win that fight, and he looked like a minus 550 favorite in that fight.
He looked phenomenal in that matchup, and for Caio, he does have a very unique style because he realizes, hey, I have great jiu-jitsu. I'm a pretty big guy, gonna be hard to take me down. Why don't I just throw crazy stuff on the feet and force my opponent to grapple me? I will disagree just slightly. I do agree, he has some karate techniques, but it's karate with a lot of fat left on the bone. I wouldn't say it's the clean technique from the outside. He will throw some, I would just say, some over-committed shots every now and then, and it will be interesting if that's a gauge that you can sort of calm down on a little bit, because I do really like his striking, and I love that mindset out of a fighter. How many fighters do we see? We talk about how good their jiu-jitsu is, how bad their wrestling is, and how good their striking is, and then we just see them go out there and kind of jab and clinch, and we never really get to see all of their strengths. With Caio, you know exactly what his strengths are when you watch him fight. He has phenomenal defensive submissions to go along with his takedown defense, which is nice, because he doesn't have to just defend in one traditional way. He can dig underhooks, he can threaten with the guillotine. It's just nice that he does have different things to go to in his back pocket. He doesn't always have to be one of these fighters who just jumps the ghillie a la Dustin Poirier. He will mix it up for his opponent every now and then. But against Gadzhi, this is going to be a tough task to ask. And that's why I do think when they start grappling, that's when this fight's really going to get fun. Because on the feet, I can see where both guys do have success. You have the big actions of Caio on the outside. You have sort of the steadier game of Gadzhi, on the inside. When these guys start to wrestle, though, that's when the fight really will tell its story. Because Gadzhi on top is the type of guy who will progress a little methodically from one stage to another with his game. But he's putting so much pressure on his opponent. He flattens them out in a really unique way that you normally only see when someone takes the back of their opponent and they're going for a rear naked choke. You see how they flatten their opponent onto the ground to where they don't really have a leg to stand on or even an arm to push off with. Gadzhi kind of does that even from his half guard and his full guard. He's someone who really likes to flatten out his opponent, to not give them any posture, to really try to get some power off. And that's just a nice thing to see from a guy making his UFC debut.
And for both of these guys, for Caio Borralho, you go back, you watch the future FC fights, really, really easy stuff to find. Former champion over there. Had that fight at middleweight against Aaron Jeffrey, 3 weeks notice. He gets that call at light heavyweight, so that's why you see the weigh in there with the asterisks on our graphics. But if you do go through it for Gadzhi, I mean, this guy, Combat Sambo world champion, probably comes as no surprise when you watch his fights. For Omargadzhiev, 13-0. The last Combat Sambo guy that I remember coming in at 13-0 happened to be at light heavyweight. Remember Shamil Gamzatov?
I do.
And you know, he kind of looked kind of hot at the start, and then Mikhail Olszewczuk sent him to the Shadow Realm, and we haven't heard of Shamil Gamzatov since. But when you do look at it for Omargadzhiev, I mean, the level of competition not really the greatest, but he is winning the fights in ways that you want to see him win them. And his last time out against Jancy Silva on Contender Series, Silva was a Muay Thai artist. That's it. He was a Muay Thai guy. And once Omargadzhiev decides, okay, I'm done playing the striking game, I'm going to take it down to the mat, he was all over Silva. And when he gets that knee bar, Silva lets out a scream like Piotr Jan on the scales. And it was just, ah! And the fight's over. But it was scary because that knee was crumpled. His opponent didn't get up. Takes on Vladimir Vasiliev over with MMA Series 20. And in that referee was Vyacheslav Kiselyev, who had a mask on, had a GoPro on his head.
There was a lot going on.
He had an earpiece, like a InSync in the year 2000, and a face mask. So a lot to take in for Kiselyev, who loves to do that little pew-pew, shoot-'em-up type of thing to the camera. The guy's a turkey. But
Lee does that too.
Yeah, but she's a fighter. You're a referee. Get yourself out of it. But when it comes to that fight against Vasiliev,
You
it really
prefer
was.
this?
No, I don't know.
Just make up your mind.
That one's cutesy. Don't do the shoot 'em up. But when it comes to Omargadziev's performance in that one, first round, it was kind of like me watching Martin Buday in his title fight with Octagon. It's like, okay, why are we striking? Like, what are we doing here? But you have Omargadzhiev going out there, throwing some different looks, closing the distance with some of his strikes. And then as that fight progresses, he just continues to implement that top pressure. And once he gets on top, you rarely say this, like, yeah, people get bucked off, this and that. This is one of the more dominant guys that we see once he gets that top pressure in, like, in terms of overall prospects that I've seen lately, this guy kind of takes the cake for me.
But, and I just got to go back to something you did say earlier. His level of competition hasn't been that good.
Yeah.
So it is easy to look really good against guys you're supposed to beat. And that's why we are going to learn a lot about both these guys in this co-main event. This is not really a hot take, but I actually do believe Gadzhi can have more success than you might believe on the feet in this matchup. And this is why. I think if he can make Caio miss with those big actions early, it's just going to help him take over a little bit more later. I don't think he should go in there and try to get into a brawl early. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I do think if he can at least keep this fight in the pocket to where Caio can still throw those big shots but not be close enough to be able to land them with a lot of effect, I do think it's just going to help Gadzhi's already superior gas tank in this fight, I do believe.
Caio Borralho is one of those guys, too, that when he starts throwing in combination, like, striking defense goes completely out the window. Even Aaron Jeffrey, even on the regional scene, whatever it might be, like, he leaves himself completely liable with his head completely up on the center line to get hit. So we'll see how that one plays out in this fight. We have a look at the odds. Borralho open to plus 130s, plus 115. Gadzhi Omargadzhiev is now at a minus 140, open at a minus 150. We have a look at the topology vote. Surprised us there to you. I'm going to say over under 65% for Omargadzhiev.
I'll say over.
And it is over 552 total votes, 73% Omargadzhiev, 73% by decision for the 27% that have Borralho, 66% by decision. And for Omargadzhiev, the interesting thing that I kind of went back and saw, he said, I represent Universal Fighters Club and MMA Factory in Paris. And for Caio Borralho, he represents Combat Club and the Fighting Nerds, but also he trains Jiu-Jitsu with Damian Maya, and he's a Judo brown belt. So, Combat Sambo World Champ, Judo brown belt, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt in Borralho. Great stylistic matchup, weird co-main event.
I'm still really excited for it, though, because this is the thing. I love fights where we know we're going to learn a lot about both guys, and that's exactly what we're going to get this weekend. You have two exciting prospects who have very good foundations of their skills, who are just going to get better from this point on, and I really do think this, it might not be fight of the night, because Vicente Luque is on this card, and 9 times out of 10, he is in a fight of the night, but I truly do think this is going to be a really fun fight, because again, you have two guys who do, maybe hype isn't the right word, but they have very promising futures ahead of them, and it's only going to get better from this point on. But I do think Gadzhiev is going to be able to win. I do think his top pressure and his cardio is going to be able to just wear on Caio as this fight progresses.
Yeah, I like Omargadzhiev as well in this fight. Again, I'm really eager to see how the jiu-jitsu plays out for Caio Borralho. We get to see him tested, especially against a guy like Omargadzhiev, because for Aaron Jeffrey, a lot more traditional with some of his takedown attempts. For Omargadzhiev, this guy just goes and goes and goes and goes. So really excited to see this fight. Both of us going with the man himself, Gadzhi Omargadzhiev, in this co-main event slot. Let us know down below, because listen, I think these guys are going to have really interesting UFC careers, and I can't wait for this fight. As you said, the rematch in that main event, Vicente Luque taking on Belal Muhammad for all the marbles, going back to UFC 205, that time that Conor McGregor beat Eddie Alvarez. Can't wait for it. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.